You have been lied to your whole life about what true sin is. We have been taught that the more that you sin, the more of a sinner you are, and the less that you sin, the less of a sinner you are. We have been taught that sin is an action. Sin is actually an identity, and it is a belief problem. Romans 5:12 says, through one man, sin entered the world, and death passed on to all. So this is why we don't have to teach babies to be bad. We have to teach them to apologize. We have to teach them to be good because it's an inheritance. We naturally are evil. We naturally produce bad things. So we don't sin and become more of sinners. We sin because we already are sinners. So Satan, when he deceives you into thinking that sin is an action, we now focus on ourselves and how well we can do, and we're imperfect people trying to produce perfection. And this is why you feel empty. This is why you feel shame. This is why you're living that up and down lifestyle. When you're doing good, you feel great. But when you're doing bad, you feel condemnation and you feel so much fear about your relationship with God. The one thing Satan does not want you to know is that sin is actually an identity. Because now you're not going to focus on the sin. You're not going to focus on the law and how well you can do. And you're going to start to focus on what Jesus has made you through his blood. This is why we are called to be reborn again. So just like a Chinese person cannot become less Chinese by eating less Chinese food, it's the same sense with us. We are sinners. Just because we sin less or try to sin less does not change the fact that we are still sinners. And this is why we see, like we said, when you try super hard to stop sinning, it works for a small amount of time, but it's never sustainable. You always fall back in to your sin because the source was never changed. In 2 Corinthians 15, it says the power of sin is found in the law. So the more that you focus on sinning less as a sinner trying to be more righteous, the more power you're giving to the sin. But the more you focus on the fact that you are righteous and perfected through the blood of Jesus, as it says in Hebrews 10:14 and 2 Corinthians 5:21 and 2 Corinthians 5:17 that says you are made new, and Romans 6:11 that says you are dead to your old self, alive in God through Christ now you can start walking from the identity of righteousness because you were born into that. So now, just like you produce sin as a byproduct of your sinful nature, you will now produce righteousness as a byproduct of your righteous nature because you are attached to Christ, the source, and he is living in you. The second part of sin is unbelief. John 16:9 says, of sin because they believe not unto me. So every time you call yourself a sinner and assume the identity of a sinner, just trying to get better, try harder, and make himself more righteous, you're actually going against what God has said about you in 1 Corinthians 6:11 that says you have been washed and you have been sanctified, meaning made holy, past tense. Because remember, the source is the root issue. What you trust in is the root issue. So if you're trusting yourself that's a sinner, only capable of evil, the byproduct of that is going to be sinful actions on the outside. The sinful actions on the outside is the symptom of you not trusting in the source, of you not believing in who God says you already are. So the battle is not sinning less. The battle is accepting that you are already a saint, already an ambassador for Christ, already a citizen of heaven, living his life here until he goes back home to heaven. Because now you can usher heaven on earth boldly and confidently instead of living just to avoid hell. You're going to live in conviction and freedom. As Romans 6:14 says, we are no longer under the law, but under grace. Sin has no dominion over you.